Hi, my name is Mynda Treacy, and my favourite Power Query feature is the ability to get files from a folder and consolidate them into one table, ready to analyse with formulas, pivot tables and charts. But the best part is the ability to add a new file to that folder and update the query, pivot tables and charts with the click of a single button. When I show people how quick it can be to update their reports with new data, they're amazed. Welcome to Power Query Magic.
Okay, this is the part where the video of me chatting to Mynda and exploring Power Query would show up. Unfortunately, I had a bit of a mishap and I didn't record any of the video. However, we do have all the audio, so apologies to Mynda and apologies to you folks who are looking to watch this recording. The audio's there. You can listen to the podcast via Apple Podcasts, via Spotify and various other places, or just listen along. I've put a few screenshots in to start us off, but this is audio only. So apologies, but I hope you still enjoy. I really enjoyed the conversation with Mynda, and thanks to Mynda for re-recording the intro you just saw. But I hope you enjoy. Let me know. So welcome, Mynda. Thank you for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Let me introduce you to the listeners. So you're a Microsoft MVP and co-founder of My Online Training Hub. Your YouTube channel has 320,000 subscribers. You've got 25,000 members in your forum. So when people ask you, what do you do? What's your response to them?
It depends on the person I'm talking to, but most of the time I just say I teach people how to use Excel and Power BI through online courses. If they're a little bit technical, then I might expand on that and go into more details. But a lot of the time it's a very basic explanation.
And do you think there's the sort of Excel now is, the speed of updates and how much is changing all the time? How are you keeping up with all this stuff?
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. The MVP community is awesome at helping keep us up to date. Not just the Excel team at Microsoft, but the MVPs in general. I rely on that email list that we have and we all share to get lots of information, and I can't keep on top of everything, but I do my best.
Yes. Do you find it is this sort of there's so many elements to it now that nobody can know everything? And yeah. I get that sort of thing of, why don't I know that? There's people who just know stuff in such depth, all these little pieces. It's sort of like you feel like a bit of there's that imposter syndrome sometimes, I find.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it happened to me just this week. I did or last week, I did a tutorial on a topic, and loads of people really loved it. And one person came back and said, "Did you know you could do it this way?" And I was like, "What? How long has that been in Excel for?" And it turns out it's been in Excel virtually forever. But out of thousands of people who watched the video, only one person told me. So that made me feel a little bit better. But yeah, you just can't know everything. And that's the beauty of Excel, I think. There's always something new, even if it's been in Excel for 20 years. There's always something new to learn. There's always something more to develop in terms of your skill set. But like you say, not everyone can know everything, and we MVPs tend to have our area of specialty. And that's great as well, because you can call on those people when you're stuck or one of your members has a question. You go, I know who's going to know the answer to that. So yeah.
I'll tell you the one that the two things that I discovered way late in the process. So pivot tables, moving fields around in a pivot table. I always used to right click on them and say move up, then right click again, move up, move up. And then somebody just said, why don't you just drag it? I was like, what do you mean drag it? And that was probably 15 years in that I discovered that.
But that's the beauty of video now. Like, we used to learn those little tips from looking over our co-worker's shoulder and going, oh, how'd you do that? But now we can learn so much more because our co-workers are now everyone who produces a video, you know, and you learn so much from watching others. I think that's the beauty of video in terms of a learning medium.
Yeah, definitely. So you live in Queensland and you went to high school there?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Coolum State?
I was actually there on Sunday to drop my son off for a chess competition. He doesn't go to that school, but yeah, it was a bit of a blast from the past walking through the school, and it's changed a lot, obviously. I won't say how many years since I've been there, but it's a long time. But it was quite bizarre to be there again after all that time. Yeah.
And did you have any idea sort of what job you wanted when you were sort of, leaving school, or when you were, did you have a plan?
No plan. I just knew I didn't want to go to university and waste 3 years on a degree that wasn't going to be something I did in the end. So I took a break and I traveled and ended up in London. And that's where I kind of found what I wanted to do. And it was kind of bizarre because all through school, I did art type subjects, and I had to do accounting in year 11 and 12 because my timetable didn't fit, and it was the only subject that fit, and I hadn't done it in the lead up to year 11 and 12, so I hated it and didn't do very well, and ironically I turned out to be an accountant. So it's kind of bizarre how things happen.
Yeah, because from scanning through your LinkedIn profile, you ended up as like global IT financial controller for NatWest Markets.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, and for Barclays then after NatWest.
And then for Barclays, so Barclays Capital, because I worked for Barclays for a while just after you left as well. So sort of,
wow.
Yeah, 2004 to 2007, I was sort of working based in Wales, but yeah, we sort of dealt a fair bit with the Barclays team. So that's the big banks and stuff. So what's that experience like, and how did you end up in one of those roles?
Yeah, that was overwhelming. When I got to London, the plan was to travel, but the person I was traveling with, we spent all of our savings in like 3 weeks. So we had to get jobs. And I got a job, first of all, for an oil company doing accounting kind of stuff. But I was sharing a house, as you do, in London as an Australian, with a load of other people. And one of the guys there worked for a bank, and he was earning loads of money. And I went, well, that's where I need to work. So I pursued a role in a bank, and I got a job at NatWest. And I was there for 3 years. And then I handed in my resignation. I planned to come back to Australia. And they said, oh, we were going to ask you to stay and pay for you to do your accounting qualification. And I was like, oh, well, I've bought a one-way ticket home. So so anyway, long story short, I took the job. I did my accounting qualification through them. So I was working full-time, studying 4 nights a week, going to college. Took me 2.5 years to complete while working full-time. So that was hard and a lot. But yeah, it just was the thing I loved to do. I loved having computers, and it was there that I first experienced spreadsheets. It was Lotus 123 when we started, and it was backslash this and backslash that, and everyone knew the shortcuts, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Anyway, it was only about 3 months after I started there that they switched to Excel. And when someone showed me VLOOKUP, I was like, I just love this. This is incredible. The amount that you could do, because I had learned how to do accounts in a ledger, like handwritten. I'm showing my age.
No, it's property accounts.
So to have a spreadsheet, and of course you're dealing with thousands and thousands of records compared to what I was doing in the ledger in Australia. So yeah, it was incredible. I just loved it and never looked back. I just, from one thing to the next, but always in a back office IT finance kind of supporting role. So yeah, that was kind of how it ended up. Not planned, but turned out for the best.
Indeed. So then you returned to Queensland and and co-founded my online training hub. And is the other co-founder your husband, Phil?
He is, yes.
Your husband first and then business partner, or the other way around?
Yeah, I'm not sure we would have survived. Actually, I met Phil when in London. He worked for NatWest as well, but at the time he was in IT and I was in IT finance. So he'd actually left and he'd come to Australia for a year in the year 2000. He was here for the Olympics and he applied for his residency. And one of the requirements for your residency was to have some letters of referral, which he'd asked one of his bosses at NatWest to do, and it came in late. So when he submitted his application, it was immediately rejected because it was late. So he had to come back to England, and I think it was within a few weeks of him being back in London, we were out at a work do for NatWest, and he was there, and we met there. So it was kind of a roundabout way of meeting him. But yeah, I did work with him years and years before we met. So
it is crazy the small chances that influence your entire life, isn't it? Everything just like these little moments that things. Yeah, it's bizarre. There's anybody has some grand big plan. It just never really works that way. At least I've not met anyone yet.
No, I always say to the kids, opportunities will arise, and you should take them. You never know what it turns out to be, as long as it's not like a major life-changing thing that you just flippantly decide on. But people present you opportunities, like doing this podcast, and you might be not necessarily on your agenda, but do it. You never know what might happen. You might enjoy it. So yeah.
Well, I was procrastinating for months about even doing this, and I was just like, it's blah blah, all these reasons not to. I just went, just do it. Just give it a go, and I'm enjoying doing it. So hopefully other people who are listening are enjoying it. I'm getting some good feedback. So so what was the spark then that made you set up the company, set up my online training hub?
Well, when we got back to Australia, there were no investment banks where we wanted to live, on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland. So we worked with small businesses doing what we did in London. So Phil worked in IT and I did the accounting side of things. And we'd come home after a day being at different clients, and we'd be talking about how bad their Excel skills were or how little they knew. And if they just knew a little bit more, how amazing, their work life would be, because they'd have all these tools. And it wasn't just Excel, it was Outlook and Word and PowerPoint and all those office skills that we just took for granted. We just thought everyone knew how to do what we did. And so we knew, I just had this epiphany one day on the way to one of my clients. Imagine if we could teach them with videos how many people we could reach, because when we started, classroom training was still huge. It's expensive and it takes people away from their job for a whole day or multiple days. So we thought, let's do some online training. And that's kind of where it started. And at the time, there were loads of people already doing it. So it wasn't a completely new thing, but it was still in its infancy compared to what it is now. So that's really where it started. But we worked on the business on my online training hub in parallel to our full-time jobs for 3 years before we developed it enough for it to be, something that we thought, we can make a go of this. So,
because what year did you set that up?
I think it was 2010 or 11. Can't remember exactly.
So, like you say, there wouldn't have been too many people doing that. Those sorts of. Had you come across some online training? Had you attended some, and you thought, this works?
Yeah, not attended any, but in our research, we'd found other resources. I can't even remember what they were now, but we knew it was possible because we'd done that research. But of course, my passion was Excel, so we focused on that. But we wanted to we also provide Outlook and Word training on our website. So we wanted to provide a bit more than just Excel, but Excel really took over and has become the main focus. And of course, now Power BI is on the scene, and that's really complementary to those people with Excel skills. Often Power BI is a tool that they can use as well.
Totally. And I was going to ask about the name. So that sort of gives a little link into this, because my online training hub, the name doesn't mention Excel.
That was intentional because we wanted to provide more than just Excel. In hindsight, we probably, had we known, we would have chosen an Excel-centric name.
Okay, that's interesting. I was going to ask you, with hindsight, what do you think? Because, there's people like the Power Pivot Pro folks. They've just rebranded as P3, as P3 Adaptive, to get rid of the Power Pivot part. I know Matt Allington, Accelerator BI. I know he would probably rather have named his content something different now that there's, Power BI is the focus. So I don't know. I think my online training hub was a good call.
Maybe now, now that we do Power BI a lot as well, it works. I think for a lot of years, because we didn't pick a niche and focus on Excel and brand ourselves as Excel, probably didn't help us grow initially. But now it allows us the flexibility.
And how long did it take before you realized that sort of this idea was good? It was a good decision, sort of?
Probably when we were able to stop doing our day-to-day jobs and focus on the business. But even then, you still had doubts because you just don't know what's around the corner. Like, even when the pandemic hit, we really thought that we would be impacted, like most people were. We were lucky that we weren't, but online training has been a savior for a lot of people because they're at home and they're now able to develop their skills. But you really just never rest on your laurels, as they say. We're constantly trying to improve and do more and, provide a really good service. So,
and what's some of the challenges then around sort of maintaining an online platform?
Well, my husband could rant for an hour. Phil does a lot of the back end stuff for our website. So all of the coding and things like that. As well as he also writes some content, and I'm finally getting him to do some tutorials because he's more technical than me. He comes from a programming background, whereas I come from an accounting background. So we complement each other in that way. But one of the hardest things is just keeping it fresh, constantly coming up. Like, we do commit to every week producing something new. And that's a video and a blog post on the same topic. But, some people like to read, some people like to watch. So we do both. And that's a lot every week. It takes the best part of the week to produce one newsletter, one video tutorial. So we don't have a lot of time to work on other things. So when it's time to re-record the course or record a new course, then you've got to squeeze that in somehow, and that's tough.
Yeah, because the cycle of things now, it used to be Excel updated. Well, I guess when we learned Excel, it didn't change for 14 years. Nothing changed. And then, in 2007, it just started to accelerate, really. Excel 2007, and then it's 3 years cycles, and then it was what's it now? Every 6 months.
Yeah, that's a challenge for us as content creators because you need to keep your content fresh. But it's also a real challenge for people who use Excel day to day, because one week an icon is called something and the next week it's called something else, and it might look different. And a lot of people really struggle with that. They cannot adapt. And yet that's how we need to start working in Excel. We need to start, or any application, because they're all turning into software as a service rather than something you buy 1 year and it stays the same for 3. But being flexible, and what I say to people is, you need to understand what the objective is of what you're doing, because when you understand that, then you can find the tool no matter what it's called, or at least you can narrow it down. And you need to be flexible. So that's a whole new learning curve for a lot of people who just aren't used to that icon changing, or the interface being slightly different. So that's tough.
Because remember there'd be an uproar when the sort of the little buttons disappeared off Excel 2003 or whatever it was, and the new ribbon came along, and it's just like, where's my buttons? Where's my little shortcut clicks? I just need them, and if anything moves, it's okay. And how do you balance the fact that you're delivering all this free content via your blog and via your website and via YouTube, etc., with the fact that you want people to pay for training? How do you balance the two?
That's a really good question. I once heard a quote by someone, I can't remember who it was, and they said, if you give people enough for free, you'll get what you want. And so when we provide content, it's never with the mindset that I want to sell something. It's always just with the mindset, I want to provide something that's really good quality, that helps people. And enough people will want to buy what I provide at a fee. And those that can't afford it or don't want to, that's fine. I am happy to help. And one thing that really surprised me with starting the website is just how rewarding it is to get that feedback from people that you've helped them. That's what drives you to keep going. And I often think when we stop doing this website, when we eventually go, okay, it's time to retire, I still think I will be in the forums helping people, because that's what I love to do. Every day, the first thing I do is check all the people who've asked me questions and get back to them. That takes up my morning. And then the afternoon is spent working to create new things or whatever it is that I have to do that day. So, and I don't think about it. I just provide the free stuff, because that's what we do, and offer a course at a fee for those people who want to follow something structured, want more, want that support, because as part of the course, I offer that dedicated support. And I think that's a little bit different to a lot of online training. Like, one of the things I realize is that it's all good and well me telling you how to write a formula or create a dashboard. But when you go to apply that to your own work, that's when you're going to get stuck and have questions. So in our courses, we provide that support forum, because that's the reality of the situation. People are going to get stuck when they start implementing it. It's slightly different to their scenario. So that's just sort of how we approach things, and never think about it as the means to the end. It's just what we do because we love to do it. And it's the same as like the MVP award. People often say to me, I want to be an MVP. How do I become an MVP? And I say to them, well, don't focus on becoming an MVP, because if your motivation is that rather than helping people, then it becomes a chore and you won't succeed, because being an MVP is all about your contribution to the community for free. So you've got to just love doing that, and the MVP designation will come. So.
Absolutely. And I, for one, well, thank you for sharing content. I've found lots of articles and things very useful, especially in the Power Query space. Hence, why we're here on this podcast today. So it's all I'm sure there's hundreds of thousands of folks that you've helped. So hopefully that does, like you say, that feedback you get keeps you motivated to keep going. And talking about the blog, so I scrolled back to one of the earliest ones. So August the 17th, 2010. Okay.
Right.
The title of that, any guesses what the title of that was? To do with passwords.
Oh.
Do you remember this?
No, I think Phil wrote that.
Did he?
I think so.
Well, your name's by it, so you're stealing.
Is it? I must have written it then.
So here's the title. 80% of passwords are at high risk from hackers. And then it talks about using KeePass and recommending that.
Yes, I still use KeePass.
Do you? Okay. I'm a fan of those sorts of things. I use LastPass, but KeePass as well. I've heard lots of people say good things. It's good.
Yeah.
We moved over to that a little while ago, and I even show people in training courses now, because Everyone's just reusing the same password over and over.
I couldn't survive without it. Like if we've got hundreds of passwords, you've got passwords for everything now, and you don't want, they can't be the same. So yeah, very careful with our passwords.
We both recommend those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And so YouTube, 320,000 subscribers. And then again, I did a filter for the oldest posts. So 10 years ago, the if statement explained.
Oh no.
Just that basic thing, the if statement explained, 140,000 views. Awesome. Right?
It's funny because this week's newsletter is a new video on nested ifs and the newer ifs function, because I saw that and I thought, oh, that needs updating. I couldn't even watch it. I can't watch the old ones, but I don't want to take them down because, like you say, there's 100,000 odd people have benefited from it. So,
totally.
It's providing a service, but I think I can do it better now.
You do look back at some of that, even, I've only been doing this a couple of years and I look back and go, oh, I probably should redo that. But there's not, there's still loads of people who are actually using Excel 2003 still. So there's probably, there's still benefit from the older versions, having the actual, like you say, the screens are going to be the same and people can follow along.
The buttons look the same. Yeah.
So then 3 years ago, how to build interactive dashboards in Excel. 6.5 million views.
I know, it's crazy.
Did that suddenly take off, or has it been a steady, acceleration?
When I posted that, it pretty much took off.
Right.
And that was the real eye opener for me, that it was so popular. And it's a long video. It's nearly an hour. Everyone says, oh, you have to do short videos. People don't like long videos, but it's still, if I look at my top 10 videos, they're all pretty much long. And they're all on dashboards. So that's kind of become my niche. I really love the dashboard reports. I love using pivot tables and charts and just all of the Excel functionality that you can bring together to produce something so incredible, in my opinion, anyway. Yes. I mean, I love Excel, so it's incredible to me. But yeah, it seems to resonate with a lot of people.
Yeah. And so when Power BI came along then, given you're in this sort of dashboarding space, what were your thoughts around it? And where do you position it with people around, should I use Excel or should I use Power BI? And I think lots of people don't realize that you can make dashboards as great as the ones you make. So when they see that, they go, well, which should I use?
Yeah.
How do you view it?
When Power BI first came out, I was so excited that I went to I can't remember what it was called, the Data Summit, I think, in Redmond in Washington in the US.
Okay.
So I took a week off and I went and soaked up everything I could about Power BI. And from that, I then developed a Power BI course and dashboards in Power BI. But you're right, that conflict between, well, can Excel do everything Power BI can do, and why should I use one and not the other? And you have to pay for Power BI and I already have Excel. So I did a video actually on Power BI versus Excel for dashboards, because I get asked that question so often. And some people don't have any choice. They have to use Excel because their company won't support them to pay for the licenses for Power BI. And whilst you can do quite a bit with Power BI for free, you can't share it easily, not the way it's intended. So generally, I'll point people to that video on Power BI versus Excel. Power BI has a steeper learning curve. Most people, or a lot of people, already have all the skills they need to build dashboards in Excel. But if you haven't used Power BI before, then you're not going to be able to just get on and build a dashboard in Power BI. Yes. There's a much steeper learning curve. There's the cost. But then on the flip side, it has all this functionality that people are crying out for, that you just simply have to pay for if you want it. So it's horses for courses. There's no right or wrong. they both can build dashboards. Excel's much quicker sometimes to build a dashboard in, depending on what your skill set is, certainly, and what the data format is and that type of thing. So yeah, it just depends. There's no best solution, in my opinion, although Power BI is amazing, and probably my favorite feature in that is row level security, which allows you to provide. And if I had this when I worked in London, it's just I just cry at the thought of it sometimes. I think it's not fair. I didn't have this tool back when I really needed it. But row level security allows you to present one dashboard, and when user A opens it, they only see their data. They don't see everyone else's data. So you can segregate the views of the data to only that they're allowed to see. So it provides that security. So if you're giving a cost center or a profit center manager his or her report, he's only going to see his team. And then you give it to the next cost center or a profit center manager, and they only see their data. So, but you as the report producers only produce one report. So, massive time savings there, and just the security around it is brilliant.
So what's the chances of us getting row level security in Excel, do you reckon? Because there must be a market for that. That's got to be.
Oh, there's definitely a market for it. I mean, every time someone asks me, I go, sorry, go get Power BI, because you can kind of fudge it in Excel. And I've created a dashboard that has some password kind of security around it. But it's not really secure. It's just guiding people in the right direction. If they download the file, they can remove the password and they can get all the data. So, it doesn't really secure it. It's more of a guide. But yeah, be nice if we had it in Excel.
It would. So you were there in the bank just sort of filtering out or deleting the data for one department, emailing that off, deleting the data for another department, emailing that.
Yeah, thousands of files. The budgeting process was mad. If I had Power Query back then, the days that we would have saved.
So let's talk Power Query. Let's talk Power Query then. Okay. So where did you first come across it? Where did you first see it?
I think at the one of the MVP summits, and they showed. I think they showed unpivoting, and they showed some other things with splitting text, and we were all just oohing and ahhing. Like, it was amazing. And I remember at that point thinking, this is the best tool to hit Excel since pivot tables. Like, it was that big. And I'd say it's better than pivot tables? It's as good as. I think they obviously serve different purposes, but Power Query is life-changing. And that's not an understatement. I get messages frequently from people saying, it has just saved me 3 hours every week. A task that used to take 3 hours now takes a click of a button. And it's hard to, it sounds like you're exaggerating, but it's true, and this is just one person. That's like repeatedly people going, and then they show their boss, and their boss has given them a promotion, and now they're they're reviewing a whole department's processes. And so when I say life-changing, it's not just life-changing for that job, but that employee now has the scope to get promotions and move into different roles that they probably didn't even think existed, So it's incredible.
I'd be interested to see whether, job adverts now, do they still just say wanted Excel skills, or are they starting to, if I was any CFO, I would be asking someone, do you know Power Query?
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't done any searches actually. But I do remember not that long ago, someone said to me, oh, do I really need Power Query? I mean, Power Pivot's where it's at. And I said, well, if I look at our forum, and I can't remember the figures, but we have group for Power Query, a group for Power Pivot, and various other groups. But if you compare the two, Power Query is like 3-to-1 questions. So that says to me, Power Query has a lot more application than Power Pivot does. Not that Power Pivot isn't great, but Power Query can be used by so many people for so many different things that it's just the most worthwhile thing to learn. I think, that's if you've got good Excel skills, but you don't know Power Query, then that should be the next thing on your list, because you're going to find a lot of use for it. I can't think of anyone who uses Excel who wouldn't benefit from Power Query, other than the most basic use. But if you work in an office and you're in Excel day to day, then you need to know it.
Yeah, I we've got very similar backgrounds. Accountants, work for banks, and I think Power Query is we just see, like you say, what we could have done if we'd have had this earlier.
Yeah,
I think we just want to share that with people and go, please discover this, because we're still people. It's been around for 7 years now, and people still don't know about it. And it's just like, please learn it. You will save so much time. So your favorite feature as well, the sort of consolidating files from folder, that's just insane. That's just so good. Saves so much time.
When I build one of my YouTube videos is on a dashboard that uses Power Query and Power Pivot, and I get files from a folder and do exactly that, consolidate them into a table. In this case, I load them into Power Pivot, and then we create the dashboard. And then at the very end, the data is basically monthly data. And then at the very end, I drag in a new file for the next month, and I click the button and the whole dashboard updates. Now, I remember that task used to take me, when I worked in London, a week every month to update my reports. So to click a button, I can just picture myself going, oh, see ya, I'm done. And that's incredible. That is life-changing. That means that you can now go and say to your boss, I've got all this spare time, what can I do now? And you're going to have the opportunity, hopefully, to learn something new. And it's just incredible. So I do love Unpivot as well, because that solves a lot of problems. But I think
glorious.
When I show people the get files from a folder and then how to update, they're like blown away.
Yeah. My go-tos would be get files from folder, unpivot, and then column from examples. And if you haven't won someone over with those three things, then they're not worth saving. It's just like, if you're not blown away by those three features, then it's so good. And it's sort of, I think as well, that training element, or freeing up that time, it's an interesting point, because there's so much to learn now. There's so much new content and ways of making what you do better, that if you can free up a bit of time, that you then invest that in learning something new and using that time to learn. Otherwise, you're just going to be doing stuff the same way you've always done it forever.
Yeah, exactly. I think learning now is more important than ever. I mean, it's always been important, but we have no excuse now. In the past, we had to wait till our employer sent us on a course, and that meant a day off work or whatever. But now we've got no excuse. We can be learning on the train on the way to work, or when we've got 5 minutes doing something that doesn't require us to think too much, like cooking the dinner or something like that. Phil and I are always learning ourselves. And one of the things that has been an unexpected byproduct of our business is that in order to teach someone else, you have to learn it first. And the best way to learn it is to teach someone else, because you have to really understand it. And but that doesn't mean you'll remember everything. Like the funniest things often is I'll think, how do I do that? And I'll Google it, and it'll be my post that comes up in my own Google search. And I go, I don't even remember writing it, so it doesn't always work, but it's certainly, I find, the most foolproof way is to teach someone else, and that will help you learn it.
And I think your learning evolves as well, and you just sort of, something you did one way a couple of years back, you go, oh, I wouldn't do it that way anymore. I now would. And also explaining it, I find running training that I sort of evolve my explanation to sort of make sense a bit easier to more people as my understanding. I remember years ago, somebody giving me some advice, I think it was when I was an auditor, and doing this sort of stuff is much more fun than being an auditor. And it was that sort of question of, if somebody can't explain something to you clearly, they probably don't understand it.
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh, okay. And that little seed always stuck with me. And I think it's been fairly true in my experience.
Yeah,
the people
that
who
is a good
explain
point.
it really well.
When I struggle to learn something, I often think others will have the same struggle. So I make sure that when I explain something, I address those things that I struggled with. But when you're training live and you're getting that feedback, then that helps you then add to the explanation, because then you learn other things that people are struggling with that maybe you didn't. So I think that's one of the benefits of live training, which I don't do a lot of, but I do a lot of forum answers and people emailing me questions. So I get an understanding of where people get stuck and what they struggle with. But it's evolving, like you say. One person will have a real stumbling block with one thing that's new to you and no one else has asked before, but then it helps you then flesh out and add to your material so that you're trying to cover all the questions that might come up. But yeah,
there's certainly common ones that sort of crop up a lot, I guess, and then you sort of target it there, and then there's the real random niche ones where you go, well, where do you draw the line then? This is an interesting one. When you're answering a question in a forum, how far down the rabbit hole do you go with somebody with a real sort of niche question? And do you find that if it interests you, you end up sort of going further than you probably should?
Yes. That's a tough one. Phil struggles with that a lot. Phil is very technical. So he understands things at a very deep level and he struggles with finding that starting point of explaining something. How far do I go?
Yes.
I find if there's a question that I really like, then I'll go to the nth degree to answer it, because partly I'm probably learning at the same time.
Yes.
If it's a question that comes up all the time, then it goes on my list to write about and do a blog post, newsletter, video, and then I can just refer people to it. So now, after so many years of doing newsletters and videos, I've answered most questions before. So it's really not rare, but it's infrequent that I get a question that I don't already have something I can point people to. So that's been one of the benefits of writing tutorials and videos, is that now when I have a question, I can invariably point someone to the answer. But yeah, you can spend hours on challenges, and usually it's the ones you don't know the answer to. And often I'll get questions where I don't know the answer, but I'm really good at Google, so I can usually find the answer.
Google's an underrated skill.
It is. Maybe that should be a course, how to get Excel help on Google.
Knowing what articles, you get a sense of which articles to click on, the wording in there in the little sort of preview thing, and you think, you also see some of the links and you go, I've been to that site before and that's useful. And there's a little art knowing exactly how to phrase it to get the right results, and knowing something's possible in the first place, so that then you start searching for it.
Yeah, knowing something's possible, but also believing something must be possible, I think also helps.
Yes. There must be a better way type of mentality gets you searching for that sort of stuff. Okay, let me get into the 5 impossible questions, right? So these are 5 totally unfair Power Query questions that I don't expect anyone to get right. And unless I'd looked up the answers myself or to look up the questions, I wouldn't know. So here we go. in the advanced editor in Power Query, there is a little drop down in the top right-hand corner of the advanced editor window, which I didn't really even notice until recently. And it's called display options. And there's 4 items in that little display options. Can you name any of them?
No. I'm thinking, can I even guess? I don't think I've ever clicked on the menus in the advanced editor. Full screen?
No. That would be nice. That would be nice.
Oh, you can just make it full screen. Wrap? Is wrap text on there?
Enable word wrap is on there.
Right. Because that
you get a point.
Is in Notepad. Notepad? Yeah. And I always have that on. And actually, I'm annoyed with myself because the amount of times I've wanted that blimmin' text in the advanced editor to wrap and it doesn't.
Yeah, it's there.
Never thought to look, but I will now.
There you go.
Thank you. You've taught me something today.
Well, I have to pass the thanks on to Miguel Escobar, who flagged this on Twitter the other day to me. So that's the only reason I asked this question. I went, what's he talking about? And I went, yeah. So thanks, Miguel. So question 2. You click in a table that has been loaded into Excel using Power Query, right? So the table's been loaded. It's sitting there in in Excel in the sheet. You click inside the table. So your table design menu little comes up at the top of the screen. Next to it is the query option comes up as well, next to that table design, which I hardly ever notice. And once in a while I think, oh, I forgot that shows up. So if you click on that query, can you name any of the buttons that show up in the ribbon?
So the contextual query tab
yes.
on the ribbon?
Yes.
Edit query.
Yes. Can you name one more just for a bonus point? I would not know.
I can picture it. I can't remember what it's called. Isn't it the is it the cog icon with for the query settings?
I'm just looking at it. No.
Oh, that was wishful thinking.
There's properties, there's delete, and then there's a few others, one of which is refresh and
that goes to
duplicate. And load to is up there as well. So there we go.
I always right click for the load to in the query pane.
Yeah, me too. So I don't use that. To be honest, the only time I ever do use that is once in a while when I just see it and my cursor's up there and I click it and go edit, and I don't ever click on anything else.
Yeah, that's the only time I've used it as well, is for editing.
Yeah. Right, question 3. The queries and connections panel that pops out from the side in Excel, can you detach that and move it somewhere else?
I would say yes, but I've never tried.
You can. Just click and drag it.
Yeah, because you can do that with all those panes. I
saw that. I think maybe even you did one with the pivot table, moving it around, and it's just like, oh.
I've started doing that when I remember with my tutorials, because I'm trying to zoom in and it's always so far on the right. So I drag it across into view.
That is a good tip. So I think I might steal that idea. Thank you.
Well.
So to remove, question 4, to remove rows in Power Query, you go and click the remove rows drop down, and then you can say remove top rows, and then you can type in the number of rows. Okay, that drop down, that remove top rows, that remove rows drop down, other than remove top rows, half a point for each other one you can mention.
Remove bottom rows.
Yeah.
Remove errors.
Oh, very good.
Remove duplicates.
Yes.
That's I'm done. I don't know what else there is.
Then there's also remove blank rows.
Oh, blanks.
And remove alternate rows.
Oh, alternate rows. Oh.
Yeah. Which I've used once or twice, actually. It's quite a nice little one when you get the, that horrible messy CSV data with every other row is empty.
That's a good one. I'll use that because I usually use add an index column and then mod to figure out which rows, and then use the numbering to filter.
Yeah, there's just too many things.
Okay, thank you. Taught me something. That's my second thing I've learned today.
Awesome. Okay. Question 5, last question. You have, this takes a little bit of picturing in your head, right? You've got a single cell table in Excel. This is your source table, okay? All that's in it is a date. And that date is the 1st of January, 1900. Okay? You pull that table into Power Query, right? And Power Query will automatically create a change type step, but I delete that. I've deleted the change type step. I then load it back as a table into Excel. What date shows up in that loaded table? So it's the 1st of January 1900 in Excel. Pull it into Power Query, get rid of the change type step, load it back into Excel. Is it the same date? Is it a different date? What's the date?
I'm trying to think whether when you remove the change type step, whether it shows the number, the date serial number 1 or not, or whether it will still show the date.
So it is, let's say, so, okay, let me clarify. When I've loaded that table back into Excel, I have formatted it as a date.
Oh, okay.
In that. So what date displays?
Well, it should display the same date, but must be a trick question. It must.
Or is it a trick question?
Well, I'm going to go with it should be the same date.
It should be the same date. It is 1 day earlier. It is 001 1900.
Wow.
Because there's
because Power Query has a zero-based numbering system?
Yes.
So when it loads 1, it should, if you change that. So when you remove the change type step, what does it show? A date?
31st. Well, check this out. It shows 31st of December, 1899.
Yes, well, I knew that Power Query could handle dates before January 1, 1900. I knew that, but so that's weird.
So yeah. So I think I don't know whether it's to do with, and we're getting a bit technical here, but I don't know whether it's to do with that sort of leap year bug that's in the 1900, whether Power Query Power Query ignores that for the first sort of whatever it is, 58 days of 1900, and then then it lines up. But yeah, different date.
Maybe. Yeah, it must be something to do with that. Because I'm trying to think if it, so the date with the date serial number 1 is the day before.
Yeah, that's weird.
January. Bizarre.
Very weird. So there we go.
I'll know when that pops up.
To be honest, can you check it out and just see if I'm making this up? Because it seems to happen on my computer.
No, I will. I'll test it.
Yeah. Right. So thanks for doing that. You did well on that quiz, better than I would have. So crystal ball time. What would you like to see in future developments, whether it's Power Query or any other Excel stuff?
So I think Power Query and Excel needs incremental refresh like we have in Power BI. That I think would be huge. Because, the example I gave as my favorite feature, that getting files from a folder, you don't want to be having to get all of those files every time you refresh, but that's what Power Query does. And when you're working with a lot of files, that can quickly become slow. So incremental refresh, just get the new data.
Yeah, and it would be good if it just did actually store that inside the Excel file, and then we can, rather than having to do, because Power BI, it's too hard currently. You've got to set up this sort of date range, and then it only works in certain scenarios, and it's just, simple incremental. That would be awesome.
A cache. Just put it in a cache and add to it. Seems simple. I mean, I don't know why they haven't done it already.
That's it. We just chuck we chuck these ideas out without any concept of how hard it is to program, but and anything on your plans for the coming sort of 12 months? Is it business as usual? Just
pretty much. I mean, Office 2022 will be out towards the end of this year. And that means a whole load of work because I've got to
new versions of
redo
everything.
the Outlook, Word, and Excel courses. So
Yeah.
I'm trying just to enjoy the routine that we have at the moment, because I know when that happens that work will become a lot busier.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's it for
what's
now.
your advice? What's your advice to people on the whole subscription versus perpetual one-off purchase license?
Just get the subscription. I mean, I did a blog post a while back now on comparing the cost benefits of subscription versus perpetual licensing. And if you're updating your software every 3 years, then it's cheaper to get the subscription.
Wow. Okay.
So, not everyone has that luxury, and obviously it depends on your employer. And if you're just using Excel for yourself, then, there's more of an argument for the perpetual. But there are so many new features coming out in Excel every month, and they are incredible that to have that license where you just get the new updates automatically is huge. The changes we've seen with dynamic arrays and the functionality that's exposed, the data types that you can create your own data types, and the organizational data types is huge. So yeah, it seems like a no-brainer to me, but I'm not paying for it. So, it's easy to say, but even when you do the cost benefit and the cost comparison, it's still cheaper if you're renewing every 3 years. So I just tell everyone that asks, just get the 365 license.
Yeah.
You won't regret it.
I think there's that risk as well that, you're going to be receiving files from somebody that don't work for you because they have built it. And then on the flip side, there's the thing of when you're building something, you've got to be conscious of the fact that it might not work for somebody else. It's a bit of a struggle.
Yeah. I mean, if you work in an organization where everyone has the same license, then that doesn't matter. But if you're a consultant and you're producing files for others, then that's a big pain point for you and them. So I think it's worth it.
I had somebody on a course a little while back from one of the banks, and they were still on Excel 2010. And you just think, you send something to the bank for them to open, and you used an XLOOKUP, and it, in your model, in your forecast for the, your coming profit and whatever it is, won't work.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's funny actually. I had someone email me last week, said we're upgrading to Excel 2016. I just had no words.
Oh no!
Like, what do you mean? Why?
Oh, why? Yeah, why? Oh,
why would you buy that when you could at least get 2019?
2019, yeah.
But, and 2022's out towards the end of this year, so no. It wasn't their choice. They were just saying this is what my employer's doing. But
crazy. Okay, so wrapping things up. So I like to ask my guests if they've had any brushes with fame, or if there's any little known facts they're willing to share about themselves.
Well, my youngest son, Finn, is a budding actor, and he was filming 2 weeks ago on the Gold Coast in a movie. And he is playing the young version of an older actor called Christoph Waltz, who is actually a 2-time Oscar winner. But also in that film is Sam Neill. And we ran into Sam Neill on set and got a picture with him and had a little chat. So he was pretty starstruck by that because he loves Jurassic Park. And so that was pretty amazing. Yeah.
That's cool. That's a good one. Excellent. And any others? Because I don't think you can top that, can you? That's pretty good.
No, that's probably the most.
Yeah, that's good.
Most famous person that we've met. So
I'm impressed. I'm impressed. And then one of the requirements of coming on the show is that you need to leave 2 articles, blogs, video posts, whatever. Your most popular which I'm guessing is the 6.5 million view video, is it? Is that the most popular one?
Yeah, that
or
is
there a
the
different
most
one?
popular. Although I have got a really popular Power Query tutorial, which is called Power Query Automates Boring Tasks. And I think that's had over 350,000 views. So that might be a good one to leave, given that this is a Power Query podcast or Power Query interview.
We'll leave links to both.
Yeah. Okay. And what was the other one? My favorite.
And then your favorite. Yeah.
And so I think the one I talked about earlier with the dashboard that uses Power Query and Power Pivot, because it really showcases how brilliant Power Query is in getting that data and just simplifying the process of updating your reports. So I'll leave you with both of those links.
Thank you, Mynda. And then finally, if we strand you on a desert island and you have to take, or you're allowed to take one object with you, it could be a luxury, it could be something useful, but that object must begin with a letter M, what would you take with you?
Oh, gosh. Well, I'm not very good at survival skills, so I'd probably take some matches.
Excellent.
And, just for a little bit of luxury, maybe some margaritas.
Okay, I'll allow you two. Items. Thanks. I like those two. They're good. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for coming on the show, Mynda.
Thank you for having me. It's been great. And I appreciate everything you do as well. I've certainly learned loads from your videos as well, Win. And
too kind.
Yeah, no, it's true. So yeah, it's been great. And I'm honored to be included in your little venture. I'm sure it's going to be a huge success. I've watched some of them already and enjoyed them, and the time passes really quickly. So yeah, it's that's always a good sign. So
I've certainly learnt, a fair few little tricks, especially Power Query ones from your blog articles and the videos and stuff. So thanks for sharing, and keep sharing the Power Query magic. And eventually, maybe 50% of Excel users one day will know what Power Query is.
Hopefully more than that. But yeah, we'll keep going.
Indeed. Okay, thanks, Mynda.
See you.